Hi everyone, welcome back to Let's Heal. Igama lam ndinguthuleka and the story continues. I was 9 years old towards the end of 1997 when I last saw my mother, and her last words to me were, "Oh, umntanam," meaning, "Oh, my child." After her visit, the police came a couple of times and nothing happened. They also failed. And so I had to continue living, secretly hoping that I would see her one day, or ndingabona umuntu esehle eteksini ibe nguye. And I think I had the belief that her name was forbidden, because even when my father visited, I never asked him about her. It was like she stopped existing, and I just had to pretend that she didn't matter, that I didn't miss her, or I didn't want to see her again. So life carried on until late 2004. A woman came bearing news that my mother had passed on and she had already been buried. And she asked if I could go and pay my last respect. My family told her that they would bring me the following weekend. And so she left, and I took her number and I memorized it, because at the time I didn't have a phone and I knew I was not allowed to have any contact with them. And after ehambile, I was told that we are not going there because my mother's family would never allow me to come back. And I was confused, and I just didn't understand how my family would think that my other family would kind of kidnap me. So kumyengenzi sense at all. And I just told myself that xa ndimdala ndizohamba ndiyozenzela, when I don't need anyone's permission to do it. And so again, life carried on as usual. No one asked me how I was doing. It was like nothing had just happened. It was like no one just told us that my mother had passed on. And I didn't get to mourn her death. I carried on with life, and the only time I mentioned her name was when my friends or someone asked about my parents. Then I would say, my mom has passed on. Until 2014, I got a call from one of my cousins. I don't know how he got my number or where he got my number, but he told me that my sister wanted to speak to me. And so we spoke, and she asked me how I was doing, about how I was being treated, or how I had been treated, because now I was like 26. And then during the conversations, she said, "They are not even your family." And I was confused. So I asked her, "What do you mean?" And she told me that your father is not your father. And I was in disbelief. And she said, "Did they never tell you this?" I said, "No." And I asked her, "Do you think they know, like they knew all along?" And she said, "Yes, everyone knew, even your father." knew that he was not your biological father. I asked her, when did he and my mom meet? Was I already born, or they met when my mom was pregnant? And she said, no, we were already born and a few years old when they met. And now I was not sure what to do. I was not sure if I should go and ask my family about this. And knowing that if I did, they would accuse me of going behind their back and speaking with people that they made sure that I never get to see or speak to. So everything now started making sense. Why they treated me the way that they did. Why my grandmother asked my mother for damages for having me for 2 years. Why they didn't allow me to go and pay my last respect. And why they said that they would never allow me to come back. So now everything started making sense. And so I went home to see my grandmother, and I asked her about it, and she denied it, saying that I look so much like my grandfather. There is no way that I was not her son's daughter. Not that I was expecting any truth from her. And so I lied, saying that I was gonna go see a friend and I'm gonna sleep over. And I went to visit my mother's family, and I finally did the ceremony in 2014 without them knowing. And I remember realizing for the first time when I last saw my mother during a therapy session. And as I was speaking, I said I last saw my mother in 1997, and when she left, she cried and she said, "Oh, my child." And then it clicked in that moment that this was the last time that I saw her. Like all along, it never occurred to me that I last saw her back then. I never thought about it. I think I really tried to not think about her, or maybe it's not that I tried. Maybe it's because all these years I have been trying to get myself to see the next day, to be strong, and not to think about the things that I could not control, or the things that were beyond my control. So I think I kind of buried any thought of my mother. Second time I ever cried for her was when I was watching Kaiser's story. I remember crying for her, crying, listening to her story. And then I realized I was no longer crying for Kaiser. I was crying all the tears that I never got to cry, feeling all the things that I never allowed myself to feel. Even to this day, I think that when it comes to this part of my story, it's not just losing her, it's also how I was robbed of the opportunity to get to know her. She could have been an incredible mother, or she could have been a bad mother, but it doesn't matter. She was still my mother. She could have given me the best life, or she could have given me the most traumatic of experiences. So I'm saying that this part of my story is the most difficult because it is not just one thing. It is a lot of things. It is also how I never got to know my siblings, how I struggle to connect with them now. It is how I still try to feel connected to her, but because of all the suppressed feelings, it is hard. So things just come and I allow myself to feel as they come. And as a mother now, I cannot begin to imagine what it must have felt like to have your child taken away from you. Today, we are bringing our most hidden and shamed identities into light by telling our stories as they are, allowing ourselves to be seen as we are. Let us connect and heal together.